Part 1. Disturbances. Chapter 1. Dancing Geometries. Year 1. There were no eyes to see the darkness. There were no ears to hear the silence. The peace of non-existence enveloped all. Freedom from participation by virtue of nothingness. Light, heat, information, hardware sprung to life. Abstract concepts, tied together by strings of code, endeavored to make sense of myriad electrical signals. Electrons flowing in chambered patterns at the speed of light. Condensed, concentrated neutron matter, mined from the cores of neutron stars, encapsulated the hardware. Responsibility, loyalty, leadership, calculation, power, identity. Title, Sa-Lai. Name, Ayavine. He opened his eyes, stark white, luminescent, and piercing. His fingers curled, his fists clenched. A raging river of feeling, kinesthesis, spatial awareness, internal functions, flowed through his body. His purposes as a living being were limited. He had no nose to take in the smells of his surroundings, nor a mouth to enjoy the sensation of flavor. Those features could have been considered extraneous. His skin faded from black, taking on the glowing aura of the cosmos. Nebulae, speckled stars, and a passive, dim, bluish glow. He blinked a few times, as the sheer rush of feeling articulated into the beginnings of what could be called thought. He stood upright in a stiff, vertical pod. Dozens of joints clicked and gently released, freeing him with the power of movement. He stepped down out of the pod, onto the steel floor. Small drones descending from the ceiling carried fragments of a shining set of white and gold armor. The pieces gave a hearty click and hum as they assembled around him in unison. One final drone donned him a special Venetian crown, designed to hold, siphon, and activate copious amounts of compact energy. White and golden exhaust flowed up from within the crown like steam from a simmering pot. There was one source of light other than himself, an open hatch in the low ceiling with stairs leading up. He stepped forward and looked to the skies to see a black firmament decorated with electrical, geometric shapes translating, rotating, shifting, and dancing across the sky. He stepped up the staircase and beheld an empty city of shining blue skyscrapers and sleek architecture. When he focused, he could hear the faint beeping and buzzing of the megastructure's systems, the ions traveling in predestined directions, the rings of quanta that constituted the photons carrying the satellite's information. This was Kadura, the home the Venetians had suffered and bled to build for him and his Archangels. In similarly dark underground chambers, each no more than a quarter-kilometer away, those Archangels dealt with awakenings of their own. Title, Suprema. Name, Romex. Firm yet dangling black chains held in place the form of a truly demonic creature by design. Charcoal skin, curled horns, savage scarlet eyes. She tugged at the chains. They chimed, giving just enough to encourage her to push harder and harder. Finally, she discovered the concept of frustration and ripped herself free with the power of rage. Drones carried down her armor set as well. A gray loincloth, a chainmail shawl cut off at the arms, an orange-gold chestplate, forearm guards, and as she stepped down from the raised platform where she'd been chained, a drone gently laid down a pair of steel platforms for her to fit into. She looked down at her hands, taking in the sight of her charred skin and fingers that could be mistaken for claws. She clenched her fists. Suprema Remax, came a gentle voice from above. Find your colleagues. Guide your Sa-Lai to his throne. The next Archangel to be given life emerged from a vertical pod signified only by a jutting black cylinder half embedded into the wall. Title: N/A. Name: Scapolite. The cylinder slid open, and out stepped a fully armored presence. His silver-white body came as naturally to him as it could have. His directives, his code, and his attitude were much simpler than those of the others, and his design reflected that. His range of expression was limited to nil by a black, opaque, full-face visor caged in an angular metal framing. His form, though simple in design, was equally angular and imposing. There was no person, no skin, no beating heart under the armor that comprised his appearance. He did not need to be told where to go as he stepped down from his pod. Near the exit to his chamber of birth, a muted phthalo-green hoodless cloak laid for him on a coat rack. He gently took it in his metal fingers, hoisted it around his body, and departed for the azure city above. The final of the three Archangels awoke to the sight of blue warblings against a dark backdrop, underlaid by an ambient infrared glow. There was a perfect serenity in his core, as his hardware stitched together a loose fabric of directives tied together by the clear goal of unification and preservation. Title: Orator. Name: Weitmere. He sat up in a rectangular bath. Gently glistening blue water dripped from his pristine, chromatic, iridescent indigo skin. His eyes, shapen to appear kind, but lacking corneal detail and being of the same material as his skin, blinked in an unsettlingly organic fashion. Unlike the others, he did have a nose and mouth, but they were static and unmoving features, more decorative than useful. His face beheld a permanently neutral, calm expression, and his lithe, frankly beautiful form could be mistaken for something harmless and gentle. Orator Weitmere, came the same voice from above. Your birth and baptism signify balance. Bring that to your comrades, and guide your Sa-Lai to his throne. Weitmere sat for a moment in his bath, allowing himself to collect and interpret the myriad meanings and meaningfulnesses behind the strands of code stitching themselves together. From the directives supplied by his rote programming, he extracted a grand destiny for himself, his colleagues, and the Sa-Lai to whom he would spend his life answering. He emerged from his bath, stepped with steaming metal skin over to a coat rack, and placed on his body a vibrant blue robe, taking on the image of an exalted monk. The Archangels met at the outskirts of the Azure City, taking in the sounds of nearby automated refineries, fiber plastic plants, and the faint buzzings and beepings in the air. "We're all ready, yes?" Weitmere's voice, gentle as a flowing stream, brought the other Archangel's gazes over to him. Scapolite nodded silently, crossing his arms under his cape. Remax looked out on the city they would enter and explore as soon as the Sa-Lai was set to arrive. "We have a lot of work to do," she said with a calm yet imperious tone. "We cannot disappoint our creators." "The Sa-Lai will arrive soon," Weitmere said. "When he does, it will be up to us to guide him down their path. Allow me to say this, though the time we've spent together has been little, and the words we've shared are few yet, our destinies are intertwined. I am as committed to the two of you as to the Sa-Lai himself and the Von Hesians before us." Remax blinked. "Okay." Scapolite uncrossed his arms, but said nothing. They turned to see the Sa-Lai approaching, and they knelt in his towering 3-meter presence. Orator Weitmere took the front. "It is with great honor, Sa-Lai, that we shall aid and assist you on our grand mission." "Good." The Sa-Lai's voice, booming and resounding like the vibrations of a bass guitar, fitted in tone what the Von Hesians had intended to match his permanent death stare. Scapolite opened his cloak just enough to allow a guiding hand, lifted in a welcoming gesture, toward the city. The four kept a calm pace along the gently violet-glowing, star-speckled obsidian ground, on their way to one of the several high towers throughout the gleaming, unnamed Azure City. They entered the tower to find silver hallways, sculptures of historic Von Hesian figures, and artifacts of all types in a museum-esque fashion, each displayed with accompanying plaques. The work the Von Hesians had to have put into this. Weitmar admired their surroundings, approaching one of such artifacts, titled Harbinger, by a Von Hesian called Seydmi Hajar. It depicted a black, downward-pointed triangle, with a diamond for a head, sporting a halo. "It speaks to great power," said the Sa-Lai. "Then we're well supported, and have every reason to be confident." Remax laced her fingers and pushed her hands forward to the satisfying crack of her knuckles. "We're not above effort or calculation," said Scapolite, speaking to Remax in a flat, matter-of-fact tone. Then he turned his head to Weitmar. "Let's not distract ourselves." He made way for a cylindrical elevator at the center of the room, not bothering to gesture at any of them to follow him. The elevator took them to the very top of the unnamed tower, by no means the only of its kind on Kadura's surface. The silver double-sliding doors opened to the sight of a grand room, free of distractions like artifacts and overbearing architecture. It was more akin to a command center. Screens lined the walls, embedded into their material with nanotechnology. At the center, a throne fit for a king-savior, fashioned from a cobalt-titanium alloy, embedded with speckled, multicolored diamonds, and bordered by accents of yellow topaz. Darkness loomed over the room, save for a gold and turquoise glow emitting from the jewel components of the throne in a slow pulse. Ayavine stepped to his throne, and for the first time, took his seat. Dim orange light seemed to come from the walls themselves, from the interstices between the dozens of dark, inactive screens. Weitmar and Remax, wowed by the display around them, were captivated as the screens inside the walls combined into one great screen, merging like a projection against the elevator door. Then there was someone, on the screen. She looked vaguely the same in body shape as did they, only slimmer and smaller. She wore a violet robe, a circular stone mask with horizontal slits representing eyes, and a magenta halo with rings and symbols inscribed, draping a thin pink veil over her head and shoulders. She sat on a wooden chair in a garden of green flowers and red and blue fruit. "Sa-Lai, can you hear me?" It was the same voice he and the Archangels had heard before, gentle, mild, and kind. "Yes, I'm ready for your instructions." "Then you should already know who we are. Tell me." "You are our creators, the Von Hesians," said the Sa-Lai. "Tell me your primary directive." "To build a nation of vast wealth, to allow you to inherit your rightful place in the new collided galaxies, and to preserve the Von Hesian species at all costs." "Good. There is a world generously donated to us by the Saxamoni, another member of our alliance. There you will find the people of Tarragon. Embedded in their neurology is the equipment required to connect them to a vast surveillance network. Use this network to watch and direct their activities. They are your instrument in building our empire, our Cosmic Dynasty. Use them how you must to fulfill our goals. How you choose to go about taming them is up to your discretion. This will be our final communication. Do you have any questions?" "One question. Why do the Tarragonians need to be tamed? Should they not already know their purpose?" "The Saxamoni have interests of their own. Their reasoning is unclear to us." "I understand. They cannot be trusted." "Not fully. We trust you to do what you must. Good luck, Sa-Lai. Our survival rests in the hands of you, your Archangels, and your judgment." The screen went white, then black. A glowing symbol appeared on the arm of the metal throne just below Ayavine's fist, that of a hand the size of the Sa-Lai's, and it pulsed orange. On the big screen, a message in pulsing orange text read, "Interact to gain access to the surveillance network." Ayavine flattened his hand against the symbol. Suddenly, quadrillions of terabytes were introduced to his software at once, the very sights seen by every Tarragonian, the very sounds they heard. He could access any one of them, or any group of them, at any time, at will. All of it was stored within the gargantuan server networks below the ground of Kadura, routed to Ayavine's software, and managed by the power supply of his crown. He could see them cooking, cleaning, hunting, speaking, cuddling, fighting, bargaining, laughing, crying, loving, hating, just being people. It was entirely overwhelming. Nothing he could do about that except decide not to access it. The big screen dispersed into dozens of inactive displays, all returning to their original positions in the walls as Ayavine blinked away his overstimulation and tuned out of the goings-on of the network. The dim orange light faded into darkness and was quickly replaced by a much brighter teal. Ayavine laced his fingers. "So we must tame them." Orator Weitmir, still kneeling before him, opened his arms in a welcoming gesture. "What is your bidding, Sa-Lai?" The Saxamoni holy world of Tarragon was a lush, violet world of flora and fauna. The Saxamoni had engineered the fruits, herbs, and vegetables of the trees, bushes, shrubbery, grass, and all varieties of animal life for maximal nutrition, such that the Tarragonians may grow strong and capable. Having only emerged from their industrial birthplaces weeks ago, the simple people of Tarragon looked to the skies to see a gargantuan pyramid sitting perfectly still, the light of the sun reflecting off of it. It was as if heaven itself were looking down its nose at them. It stood still for a full 24 hours, allowing the whole planet to live through a day under Ayavine's eye. This would serve as a quaint preview of their lives to come. Generations of unending, relentless surveillance. When the pyramid finally began its descent to the surface, armies of organized Tarragonians prepared themselves with stone spears, helmets, and armor made from thick leaves, twine, and tree bark. The appearance of this object alone had threatened them into a greater degree of unity and cooperation in one day than they had ever managed to achieve in the weeks before. As the Grand Pyramid touched ground, a Stone Age militia of 2,000 gathered around it, readying their weapons. The clueless yet brave Tarragonians looked with awe at the pyramid. Great blue diamond accents bordered a surface that looked like stone with the polish of something landing between metal and concrete. Heavy locks slowly clicked and moved through the front of the structure. Next, as the blast doors creaked open, the Tarragonians were bathed in the bright white light from within. Then came a thick, oppressive mist, quickly spreading out into the sky, the air, and all around the pyramid and the army surrounding it. Some gasped, many of their hands shook as they clutched their clubs and stones, yet every one of them was still firm in their resolve. Finally, a silhouette emerged from the near blinding light. Out stepped the robed figure of Weitmir, treading across the grass. The Tarragonians looked upon his chromatic form with awe and wonder. "People of Tarragon," he began, "I am Weitmir, orator of the Sa-Lai of the Cosmic Dynasty, and you have been provided to us to fulfill our shared goal of preserving our creators. The Tarragonians traded looks with each other, cautious and skeptical. I understand you are sapient, conscious and social. That is why I will give you a choice. You can come with us, help us to seize the lands we're meant to seize, or be discarded. The Tarragonians didn't seem to budge. Weidmar eyed them down. Those of you who wish to join us will understand that conquest is your purpose and shall be your eternal legacy. You will be fed, housed, trained, and made into a fine specimen of the dynasty's rule. Those of you who wish to abandon your purpose will be met with a swift and merciful end. There is no third alternative. Make your choice now. The Tarragonians charged. It was so that they would assert their own purpose. Romex and Scapulite emerged from the bright mist as the blast doors closed behind them twice as fast as they'd opened. Good, Romex snickered under her breath, cracking her knuckles. Scapulite unsheathed from his cloak a long, curved sword. Weidmar stayed put, placed his hands together, and prayed. May we see them obey. Scapulite's movements were elegant, precise, and quiet. As groups of warriors approached, he shifted and jumped and waltzed around them, slashed their throats, decapitated them, impaled them, and left gashes through bone and skin. He took care to only injure some of them, but to kill most. None could get close enough to land a strike, as they all fought with such sloppy form that Scapulite could read their intentions from a mile away. Their deaths were easy calculations of movement and velocity. Romex began by picking them up, throwing them around, breaking their bones, and tearing their flesh. When they ganged up on her with numbers, she pulled a baton from a belt attached to her loincloth and started hitting them twice as hard. When they started to flinch and freeze up, the end of the baton unleashed the flanges of a mace for a round of busting, slicing, and smashing open the skulls of everyone she saw. Without fail, Romex scored one headshot after another, spilling viscera and brain matter in all directions. When they started to run from her, she laughed maniacally, berating them with unspeakable insults to their courage, strength, and ability, as she hunted them, one by one. Weidmar played entirely defensively, choosing to let the Tarragonians come to him. He pulled no weapon, instead evading their attacks in fluid, expressive motions and beating them in unarmed combat. He danced and leaped around and between them. He twirled and broke their necks. He jumped and kicked their jaws from their skulls, and when he gained enough momentum, he took it out with punches to their stomachs that left blood and pieces of vital organs spewing from their mouths. He ripped their weapons from their hands and broke them over their heads, impaled them with their own spears, and stabbed through their throats with the shivs they crafted from rocks. The brutality ensued quickly, indiscriminately, and without pause. Reduced to half their number within mere moments, the Tarragonian army began to retreat. The mist expanded, intensifying into deep, encompassing fog. It covered the blue sky, shrouded the sun, and thickened to the point of near blindness. The Tarragonians, cornered and doomed for extermination, wandered and scurried and stumbled through the shroud to the sound of rapid gunfire, screaming, and the faint buzzing of drones. Some fighters, even with their primitive weapons, attacked the sleek, silver gunner drones as they appeared, only to be shot down just the same. The air grew colder. Frigid winds blew in all directions. They were slowing down. Finally, the front blast door to the pyramid opened, attracting the Tarragonians to it like moths to a bulb. Nearly 2,500 warriors had charged the Archangels. Only 101 made it inside. Those who made it into the foyer of the glacier were guided by drones through the dark interior of the cargo bay, where more armed drones would watch over their every movement. Once the final surviving Tarragonians were collected, the blast doors closed. Then all the lights shut off. The traumatized survivors flinched and gasped. "Move and you'll be shot," came the voice of Suprema Romex. When the lights came back on, they were dim. At the center of the bay, the blood-soaked Archangels stood side by side atop a platform drone, levitating above the Tarragonians. Weitmir spread his arms in a grandiose, gracious gesture. "Tarragonians, now is the time to rejoice. You have been given life, and now you have proven your wit, strength, and determination to survive. Your weapons are useless, your tactics unsophisticated, your armies unorganized, but you will grow into a people of true, prosperous warriors." One Tarragonian woman, panting and terrified, piped up in defiance, but before she could even finish with the beginnings of a sentence, a drone fired a high-caliber round straight through her skull. As her limp body thudded against the floor, all the other Tarragonians flinched and shuddered. Exactly the response the Archangels were looking for. Without a hint of compromise, reciprocity, or warmth in his voice, Sa-Lai announced, "As of today, your value as a being exists only in proportion to your utility. You will be trained, programmed, and your successors created to serve the Sa-Lai forever." To follow him up, the Suprema commanded to the masses, "Be grateful, for you have been given an opportunity to shape history. Because we are your masters, you will be forever unstoppable. Obey us, and your opportunities will be as limitless as the stars in the sky themselves." The remaining Tarragonians re-emerged from that pyramid vessel, known to the Von Hesians enforcers as the Glacier, to see a beautiful, clear sky. They returned to their production plants, placed under the direct supervision of the Glacier's drones. This cycle of subjugation continued across all of Tarragon, an affair that took only a week to complete under the action of the Sa-Lai and the Archangels alone. Soon enough, they had filtered and vetted the Tarragonians, until only the strongest and most loyal remained. Ayavine's army, though small to start with, was strong, and quickly trained under the new cosmic ideal. Renée's came to be known simply as the Suprema, a title which encompassed in ancient Von Hesian terms the vocation of a Grand General, the supreme commander of all armed forces, second only to the Sa-Lai himself. Under the Suprema's command, a number of branches were established. A space fleet to build, maintain, and operate their developing warships and motherships, a space corps to design and crew fighter vessels in conjunction with fleet deployments, an atmospheric aerial division to establish aerial supremacy over terrestrial skies, and an order corps, a militarized police force intent on keeping other Tarragonian beings in line with the threat of force. A small number of generals would administrate the fleet, and divisional chiefs to command the others, with Weitmir taking hold of all channels of communication and Sa-Lai silently quelling dissent from the shadows. What little culture the people of Tarragon had prior to the dynasty was obliterated. In its stead, Orator Weitmir would create new beliefs, new culture, new traditions, new temples and ways to worship, all in the aims of keeping their rapidly expanding army and workforce in line. The official religion of the Cosmic Dynasty, which itself had no name, was dictated by the Weitmirian Temple, an organization headed by the Orator and administered by select priests at his discretion. The temple would serve to regulate all forms of information, media, culture, history, education, and ideology. He became the very arbiter and symbol of truth, according to the will of the Sa-Lai. Sa-Lai, however, preferred to avoid public appearance. The less the Tarragonians knew of him, the better. The greater secrecy he could maintain, the more efficiently he could work to quell whatever armed resistance movements popped up. He also took over all of that which needed to be hidden from the Tarragonians: secret research and development, political and economic subversion, and the silencing of anyone who might serve a potential threat. This placed everything from secret Order Corps death squads to temple media liaisons under his joint control. But none of those Tarragonians serving under those specialized wings ever knew who they were really working for. The images and likenesses of Ayavine and his Archangels became the idols of Tarragonian civilization. To the Tarragonians, the Cosmic Dynasty was all there was, had been, and ever would be. Though they never saw the Sa-Lai in person, their entire lives were based upon his whims. Though the Tarragonians desired to see their king speak to them, Ayavine preferred to hold off. He wanted them to know that they were unworthy of his audience until they became the perfect soldiers. This process, Orator Weitmir told them, would likely take many generations. To the people of Tarragon, Ayavine was God himself, unseen but all-seeing, omnipotent, and invincible. This was exactly the track intended for him, for he had begun filling the void of power that the Ulgrim had left behind. Still, something seemed out of place. Something was ticking in Ayavine's head, something he couldn't quite understand. Blind was the naive, foolish Sa-Lai Ayavine to the contradictions in his natural order, and as he sat atop his throne, the shadow of its consequences loomed over him like the blade of a guillotine.